Fire tearing through United 2847's cockpit, 60 seconds left, dying Captain Hayes screamed, "Who are you?" when flight attendant Sarah Collins ripped off her vest, revealing burn scars and a hidden identity. She transmitted the military call sign that made Black Hawk scramble, Sandstorm requesting escort. The drone pilot who killed 47 people was saving 184. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Sarah Collins had learned to recognize death by smell. Not the dramatic kind, not blood or gunpowder or burning flesh. The quiet kind. The kind that started small and grew into something unstoppable. Today, death smelled like burning plastic and lithium. She was standing in the galley of United Flight 2847, 47 minutes into a routine Chicago to Denver flight, when the chemical stench hit her nostrils. Her hands froze mid-motion, coffee pot suspended in air. Lithium battery fire. The thought came instantly, bypassing her conscious mind. 5 years of serving drinks and checking seatbelts vanished. What remained was the combat operator she'd been trained to be. She set down the coffee pot with deliberate calm and moved toward the smell. The other flight attendants didn't notice. Jessica, the 23-year-old who'd been hired 6 months ago, was chatting with a passenger about connecting flights. Marco, the senior attendant who'd been with United for 15 years, was restocking napkins in the aft galley. They couldn't smell it yet. But Sarah could. Row 18. Overhead bin. Around her, passengers were oblivious. A businessman in 16C typed furiously on his laptop, finishing a presentation. Target assessment, her brain catalogued automatically, right-handed, 180 pounds, sitting position limits mobility, neutralize with nerve strike to carotid, 2.3 seconds. A mother in 17A read to her daughter, showing her pictures in a children's book. Non-threat. Civilian. Unaware of surroundings. Vulnerable. A teenager in 19B had headphones on, eyes closed, head bobbing to music nobody else could hear. Completely exposed. Would never see an attack coming. Old habits. Impossible to break. Sarah reached the overhead bin and paused, her hand on the latch. Behind her professional smile and regulation navy blue uniform, her mind was calculating scenarios. Lithium battery fires burned hot, over 500 degrees Celsius. They produced toxic gases. They spread fast. And in an enclosed aircraft at 31,000 feet, they were one of the most dangerous emergencies possible. She opened the bin. Flames. Small ones, no bigger than a candle flame, contained to a portable battery pack that some idiot had smuggled through security despite regulations. The battery was melting, plastic bubbling, flames licking at the surrounding luggage. Sarah's training took over. No panic. No hesitation. Pure muscle memory from emergency drills she'd performed 1,000 times. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from its mount on the galley wall. The other flight attendants looked up, confused. "Fire in the overhead," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made people move without questioning. Not the friendly flight attendant voice. Something else. Something from before. Jessica's eyes went wide. Oh my God. Move passengers away from rows 16 through 20. Now. Marco was already moving, his experience kicking in. Ladies and gentlemen, please move to the rear of the cabin. Quickly and calmly. Sarah aimed the extinguisher into the bin and pulled the trigger. White foam erupted, covering the flames. The fire suppression chemical coated the battery pack, the luggage, everything. The flames died. For exactly 4 seconds. Then Sarah saw it, the thing that made her stomach drop and her combat-trained mind start calculating survival probabilities. The wiring. The electrical wiring running through the overhead compartment had already caught fire. The flames had spread into the ceiling panels, into the aircraft's nervous system, into the arteries that controlled everything. And now they were spreading toward the cockpit. The overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the screaming started. Not from passengers yet. From the aircraft itself. Warning alarms in the cockpit. Fire detection systems. Electrical fault indicators. Sarah looked up at the ceiling panels and saw wisps of smoke seeping through the seams. "Get passengers away from this section," she ordered Jessica, who looked paralyzed with fear. "Now. Move them to the rear. Put on oxygen masks. Emergency procedures." "But the fire's out." "The fire is in the walls. It's spreading. Move. Now." The authority in her voice, the voice of a captain who'd commanded combat operations, snapped Jessica out of her paralysis. She started herding passengers toward the back of the aircraft. Sarah stood in the aisle, watching smoke begin to pour from the air vents. She'd seen this scenario before. Not in person, but in training. In simulations. In classified briefings about aircraft vulnerabilities. Lithium battery fires in overhead compartments could spread to electrical systems in less than 90 seconds. Once in the electrical bay, they could cascade through control systems. And once they reached the cockpit. 60 seconds until this became catastrophic. She started running toward the cockpit. In the cockpit, Captain Robert Hayes saw every warning light on his instrument panel illuminate simultaneously. 21,000 hours of flying experience told him this was bad. Very bad. The fire warning alarm was screaming. Electrical system fault indicators were lighting up like a Christmas tree. And the smoke detection system for the forward cargo bay was flashing red. Except there was no cargo in the forward bay. Which meant the smoke was coming from somewhere else. "What the hell?" First Officer Amanda Parks started to say. Then the smoke came. It poured through the air vents like a living thing, thick, black, toxic. The smell was overwhelming, burning plastic, electrical insulation, chemicals that had no business being in human lungs. Robert grabbed for his oxygen mask. His hands found the mask, pulled it down, secured it over his face. Nothing. No oxygen flow. The fire had already severed the supply lines. Fire in the electrical bay. Amanda shouted, her voice rising with panic. "It's spreading, we need to." She started coughing. Violent, racking coughs that bent her forward over the controls. Robert tried to think through the procedure. Electrical fire. Smoke in cockpit. Emergency descent. Emergency landing. But the smoke was so thick now he couldn't see the instruments 6 inches from his face. His hands fumbled for the radio. Had to declare emergency. Had to get clearance for immediate descent. "Denver Center, United 2847, we have," he coughed. "We have smoke in the cockpit. Electrical fire. Requesting immediate." His vision blurred. The edges of the world turned soft, fuzzy. Hypoxia. He was suffocating. The smoke wasn't just blocking his vision. It was replacing the oxygen in the cockpit. Every breath he took was pulling in toxic fumes instead of air. "Robert, I can't see," Amanda's voice was weak, fading. "I can't." "Stay with me," he gasped, but his own words sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. "We need to descend, emergency descent." He reached for the altitude selector, but his hand wouldn't cooperate. His fingers felt numb, distant, like they belonged to someone else. The aircraft was still on autopilot, still flying straight and level at 31,000 feet. But the autopilot relied on electrical systems. And those systems were dying, one by one, as the fire spread through the wiring. At any moment, they could lose all control. Robert's vision tunneled. He could see Amanda slumping forward in her seat, unconscious. He tried to reach for her, tried to help, but his arms wouldn't move. The last thing Captain Robert Hayes heard before losing consciousness was the fire alarm screaming and someone pounding on the cockpit door. Then nothing. Sarah reached the cockpit door 15 seconds after both pilots collapsed. She could hear the alarms through the door. Could smell the smoke. Could feel the heat radiating through the metal. She punched in the emergency access code, a 6-digit number that all flight attendants knew but prayed they'd never have to use. The electronic lock didn't respond. The display remained dark. Fire had damaged the electronic lock. Behind her, passengers were screaming. Smoke was filling the cabin. Flight attendants were deploying oxygen masks, trying to maintain order while terror spread like the fire itself. Marco appeared beside her, his face pale. "Sarah, what's happening?" "Pilots are unconscious. Fire's in the cockpit. Lock is dead." Her voice was clinical, detached. "I need to get in there." "How?" "The door." Sarah grabbed the manual release handle, a backup system designed for exactly this kind of emergency. She yanked with strength that surprised Marco, strength she'd built in another life. Doing pull-ups in combat gear. Running obstacle courses. Training for scenarios exactly like this. The mechanism groaned. Resisted. The heat from the fire had warped the metal. Sarah planted her foot against the wall and pulled harder. Muscles in her shoulders and back straining. The burned scars on her forearms, hidden under her long-sleeved uniform, aching. The mechanism broke with a metallic snap. She forced the door open. The scene inside stopped her breath. Both pilots unconscious, slumped in their seats like rag dolls. Smoke so thick she could barely see them. Flames visible through the ceiling panels, spreading like cancer through the cockpit's arteries. The instrument panels flickering, dying, one by one. The heat hit her like a physical force. Her eyes watered. Her lungs burned. The aircraft was still flying, autopilot engaged, but the fire was eating through control systems. In less than a minute, maybe two, there would be nothing left to control. Sarah's flight attendant training screamed at her, "Get the pilots out. Drag them into the cabin. Start CPR. Call for help. Follow emergency procedures." But another voice, one she tried to bury for 5 years, calculated differently. That voice was cold. Clinical. It measured time in seconds, evaluated survival probability, made choices based on mathematics instead of emotion. That voice had launched 263 drone strikes. Had calculated kill trajectories and collateral damage. Had made life and death decisions from 7,000 miles away. That voice said, "The pilots cannot be revived in 60 seconds. CPR takes minutes. The aircraft needs a pilot now. Not in 5 minutes. Now." Both pilots unconscious, neutralized threats, cannot interfere. Fire spreading, 45 seconds until critical system failure. Aircraft at 31,000 feet, requires immediate descent to survivable altitude. 184 passengers, survival probability approaches 0 without immediate action. Choice, save pilots and lose everyone, or fly the aircraft and save everyone. The mathematics were brutal. And clear. Sarah looked at her hands. These hands had served 50,000 cups of coffee. These hands had helped elderly passengers with their luggage and wiped up spilled juice and demonstrated how to fasten seatbelts. These hands had also controlled MQ-9 Reaper drones carrying Hellfire missiles. Had launched strikes that killed high-value targets. Had operated in sandstorms and impossible conditions. Had killed 47 people at a wedding because the intelligence was wrong. She made her choice. She stepped over Captain Hayes's unconscious body, his oxygen mask dangling uselessly, his face slack, and threw herself into the captain's seat. The heat was incredible. The smoke was choking. But she'd trained in worse. She scanned the instruments through the smoke. Altitude, 31,000 feet. Airspeed, 340 knots. Autopilot, engaged but failing, indicator light flickering. Fire warnings, every zone. Cockpit, electrical bay, forward cargo area. Engine indicators, normal. The fire hadn't reached the engines yet. Control surface status, unknown. Couldn't tell until she took manual control. Time until total electrical failure, approximately 45 seconds, maybe less. Sarah ripped off her flight attendant vest, the navy blue polyester that marked her as Sarah Collins, civilian, nobody important. Underneath, her forearms were covered in burned scars. Old scars, white and twisted, that she'd hidden under long sleeves for 5 years. Not from accidents. From training. From the time a drone control trailer caught fire at Creech Air Force Base and she stayed at her console to complete her mission while her arms burned. From emergency fire drills. From simulator sessions where they deliberately set fires to teach operators how to function through disaster. Her hands, scarred, calloused, steady, wrapped around the yoke. And for the first time in 5 years, Captain Isra, Sandstorm, Khalil flew again. Her hands remembered everything. The muscle memory was instant, perfect, like she'd never stopped. Throttle position. Trim settings. Instrument scan pattern. The way the yoke felt in her hands. The slight resistance in the control columns. It all came flooding back like she'd never left. But this wasn't a drone operated from 7,000 miles away through satellite links with 1.2-second delay. This was real. Immediate. She could feel the aircraft shuddering around her. Smell the burning. Hear the alarms screaming. Feel the heat on her skin. She disconnected the dying autopilot. The aircraft lurched as manual control engaged. Without autopilot correction, she could feel every irregularity, every response, every damaged system. The yoke was responding, but sluggishly. The fire had already damaged control cables. She pushed the yoke forward, initiating an emergency descent. The aircraft's nose dropped. G-forces pressed her back into the seat. Behind her, in the cabin, passengers screamed as the descent began. She keyed the intercom, "Flight attendants, brace passengers for emergency descent. We're going down fast." Marco's voice came back, shaky but professional, "Understood. Oxygen masks deployed. Passengers secured." Sarah, no, Isra, focused on the instruments. Descending through 29,000 feet. Rate of descent, 4,000 feet per minute. Too fast for passenger comfort, but necessary. They needed to get below 10,000 feet where passengers could breathe without oxygen masks. She checked the engine indicators. Both engines still running normally. That was good. The fire hadn't reached them yet. But the electrical system was dying. Instrument lights were flickering. The radio was crackling with static. She had maybe 2 minutes of partial electrical power. After that, she'd be flying on backup systems only. She needed help. She needed to declare an emergency. She needed military assistance because civilian air traffic control wouldn't understand what was happening. She keyed the radio. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is United 2847. I have assumed control of the aircraft. Both pilots incapacitated. Catastrophic electrical fire in cockpit. Request immediate emergency landing clearance and fire response." Static. Then Denver Center's voice, confused, "United 2847, say again, who is speaking? Identify yourself." Isra hesitated. If she identified herself using her real name, everything ended. 5 years of hiding. 5 years of safety. 5 years of being Sarah Collins, the flight attendant nobody noticed. Gone. But 184 people were going to die if she didn't get help from people who understood combat emergencies. From people who knew how to respond to classified authentication codes. From people who would scramble military assets immediately. She reached under her shirt with one hand, keeping the other on the yoke. Her fingers found the chain. The dog tags she'd worn hidden for 5 years. The tags that bore a name the Pentagon had erased from every record. The tags that said, Khalil, Isra M, USAF. 03. Call sign, Sandstorm. She pulled them out, reading the stamped metal even though she'd memorized every letter years ago. And she made a decision that would change everything. She keyed the radio and spoke 4 words that would trigger classified protocols in military installations across 3 states. Sandstorm requesting immediate escort. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. The radio frequency went dead. Not static. Not background noise. Pure silence, like everyone listening had stopped breathing. Then, say again your last transmission. Isra's voice changed. No longer the friendly flight attendant. No longer Sarah Collins who served coffee with a smile. This was the voice of Captain Isra Khalil, combat drone operator, 263 missions, 89 confirmed kills. The voice that had coordinated airstrikes and called in fire support and operated in conditions that grounded every other pilot. Denver Center, this is Captain Isra Khalil, United States Air Force, call sign Sandstorm. Authentication code Charlie 7 Tango November 4 Bravo. I am a classified drone warfare specialist currently flying United 2847. Both commercial pilots are unconscious. I have catastrophic electrical fire destroying flight controls. I need immediate military escort and emergency landing protocol. I have 184 souls aboard and approximately 6 minutes until this aircraft becomes unflyable. Respond now. The silence that followed felt like falling. At Peterson Space Force Base, Colorado, 85 miles south of Denver, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb was drinking terrible coffee when the transmission came through the command center speakers. He froze with the cup halfway to his lips. Did she just say Sandstorm? He asked the operator. The young airman, couldn't be more than 23, looked confused, his fingers hovering over his keyboard. Yes, sir. She authenticated with code Charlie 7 Tango November 4 Bravo. That code matches. He typed frantically. Sir, this can't be right. Marcus set down his coffee and walked to the operator's station. What can't be right? Sandstorm was the call sign of Captain Isra Khalil. She was a drone warfare specialist. Discharged 5 years ago under medical pretenses. Her records are classified top secret. She's supposed to be dead, Marcus finished quietly. Not literally dead, but operationally dead. Erased. The kind of dead that meant she didn't exist in any database, any roster, any record. Not dead, sir. Witness protection. Current status unknown. But sir, according to this, she's been inactive for 5 years. Why would she be flying a commercial aircraft? Marcus stared at the screen showing the authentication code. It was valid. Current. The kind of code that only active operators had access to. Except Isra Khalil wasn't active. She'd been buried in witness protection after Operation White Raven. After the Yemen wedding massacre that killed 47 civilians. After the political firestorm that forced the Pentagon to erase everyone involved. Pull up everything we have on her, Marcus ordered. The file appeared on the main display screen, redacted. Almost everything was blacked out. What remained was bare bones. Khalil, Isra M. Rank, Captain, 03, United States Air Force Specialty, MQ-9 Reaper Remote Pilot Call Sign, Sandstorm Missions, 263, 89 Confirmed Eliminations, Decorations, Redacted, Discharge Date, March 15, 2020 Discharge Reason, Redacted, Current Status, Witness Protection, Classified, Operational Status, INACTAV Security Clearance, Revoked. Sir, Should we respond? The operator asked. If she's in witness protection, she's not supposed to be using authentication codes. This could be a breach. Or she's flying a burning aircraft and needs help, Marcus interrupted. He grabbed the secure phone. Get me NORAD. Get me the Pentagon. And scramble Black Hawks immediately. Sir, we don't have authorization to. That pilot just used a classified authentication code on an open emergency frequency. She's either our asset in crisis or someone pretending to be our asset. Either way, we need eyes on that aircraft. And if she really is Sandstorm? He paused, thinking about the implications. If she really is Isra Khalil, and she's breaking cover to fly a commercial aircraft, then something has gone catastrophically wrong. Scramble the Black Hawks. Now. The operator started issuing orders. Within 90 seconds, alert klaxons were sounding across Peterson Space Force Base. Within 3 minutes, 4 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters were lifting off, fully armed, crews scrambling to understand why they were being sent to escort a civilian airliner. And in Washington, D.C., in a secure operations center buried 3 stories underground, phones started ringing as the CIA and Pentagon realized that a person they'd erased 5 years ago had just announced herself to the world. Isra's hands were steady on the yoke as she descended through 22,000 feet, but her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere 5 years in the past. Creech Air Force Base, Nevada. A climate-controlled trailer 7,000 miles from her targets. The smell of stale coffee and electronic equipment. The hum of computer fans and cooling systems. She'd been 24 years old. Captain Isra Khalil. Call sign Sandstorm. She sat in front of multiple screens showing real-time footage from an MQ-9 Reaper drone flying over the mountains of Yemen. The satellite feed had a 1.2-second delay, long enough to make precision targeting challenging, short enough that she'd learned to compensate instinctively. The delay meant she saw everything 1.2 seconds after it happened. Saw people move. Saw them talk. Saw them live their lives, delayed by just over a second. It was enough time to know what she was about to do. Not enough time to stop it once started. She'd flown 263 missions by then. 89 confirmed kills. High-value targets. Terrorists. Bomb makers. People who killed civilians and planned attacks. 0 friendly fire incidents. 0 collateral damage. Perfect record. Her specialty was operating in impossible conditions. Sandstorms. Dust storms. Low visibility. Other pilots grounded their drones when weather got bad. Isra flew through it all. Hence the call sign, Sandstorm. The operator who flew when no one else could. She was the best. Precise. Clinical. Detached. Until Operation White Raven. The mission brief had been simple. Operation White Raven, classified top secret. Target, Abdul Hamza, high-value terrorist cell leader location, compound in rural Yemen, coordinates 15.3421 degrees north, 44.1876 degree E. Intelligence source, NSA communications intercept, CIA Humint asset, satellite imagery confirmed presence, 3 independent sources confirmed target at location collateral risk, low, compound isolated, no civilian thermal signatures detected, authorization, presidential finding dated, redacted, execute, immediately upon confirmation. Isra launched the drone at 0400 hours local time. 8-hour flight to the target area. She'd monitored communications, tracked movement patterns, waited for final confirmation. At 1247 hours, the radio crackled, Sandstorm, this is command. Intelligence confirms target is inside the compound. 3 positive identifications. You are cleared hot. Execute immediately. Isra had followed the protocol perfectly. She acquired the target building on her screen, a 2-story compound with mud brick walls. Her targeting system overlaid the coordinates. Perfect match. She checked thermal imagery. Multiple heat signatures inside the building, all adult-sized based on thermal mass. No small signatures that would indicate children. She confirmed with the ground observation team, "Ground team, this is Sandstorm. Confirm no civilians in target area." Sandstorm, ground. Confirmed. Area is clear. Target is isolated. Execute. She locked the Hellfire missile. The targeting reticle centered on the building. Triple check, coordinates verified. Thermal imaging verified. Ground team confirmed. Intelligence confirmed. Everything green. She said a small prayer, something she always did, even though she wasn't particularly religious. A prayer for precision. For accuracy. For the weapon to go exactly where it was supposed to go. Her finger moved to the trigger. Sandstorm executing, she transmitted. She fired. On her screen, she watched the missile track downward. The 1.2-second delay meant she was watching the past, but it was close enough to real time. The missile impacted the building dead center. Direct hit. The building exploded in a flash of white light on her thermal camera. Infrared bloom. Heat signature expanding. Secondary explosions, probably ammunition or bomb-making materials cooking off. Sandstorm, command. Target destroyed. Well done. RTB the drone. Mission successful. Isra had logged the mission, filed her report, and gone home to her apartment off base. She'd showered, made dinner, watched TV. Just another day at work. Except 12 hours later, she was called back to base. Emergency recall. No explanation. She arrived to find the operations center in chaos. Generals on secure video calls. Intelligence analysts shouting at each other. CNN playing on every monitor. Al Jazeera had broadcast footage from the strike site. Isra watched the footage and felt her world end. It wasn't a terrorist compound. It was a wedding. The video showed bodies scattered across the rubble. Small bodies. Children's bodies. A bride's white dress soaked in blood. Wedding decorations, flowers, lights, banners, torn and burning. The high-value target, Abdul Hamza, was there. But it was the wrong Abdul Hamza. Not the terrorist cell leader. A groom. A 26-year-old schoolteacher who happened to have the same name. The intelligence had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. 3 independent sources, all wrong. NSA communications intercept, wrong phone, wrong person. CIA HUMINT asset, wrong location, wrong target. Satellite imagery, right building, wrong identification. Wrong everything. 47 civilians dead. 12 of them children. The bride. The groom. Both families. Friends. Neighbors who'd come to celebrate. All dead. Isra had run to the bathroom and vomited. Then vomited again. Then collapsed on the floor, shaking. The footage played on repeat. News channels around the world. International outrage. Yemen threatening to expel American forces. Allied governments demanding answers. A political catastrophe. And Captain Isra Khalil was at the center of it. The general who came to see her 48 hours after the strike was someone she'd never met. 3 stars. Face like granite. Eyes that had seen too much. He sat across from her in a secure conference room. No recording devices. No witnesses. Just the 2 of them. Captain Khalil, he began, you understand the severity of this situation. Isra stared at her hands. The hands that had fired the missile. I followed protocol. The intelligence was wrong. Yes. The intelligence was wrong. Multiple failures across multiple agencies. We're investigating. But that investigation will take months, maybe years. Right now, we have a political disaster. Yemen is threatening to expose the entire drone program. Our allies are demanding accountability. The president needs deniability. Deniability, Isra repeated numbly. The strike never happened. Or it happened, but it was a tragic error by local forces. Or it happened, but we weren't involved. The story is still being decided at levels above both of us. But what's already been decided is this: you don't exist. Isra looked up. What? Your operational record will be classified above top secret. Your name will be removed from all mission logs. You will be discharged under medical pretenses, PTSD from unrelated combat stress. You'll enter witness protection with a new identity. Full benefits. New life. Protection. You're erasing me. We're protecting national security. And we're protecting you. The families of those killed want revenge. If your name becomes public, you'll be a target for every terrorist organization in the Middle East. Witness protection keeps you alive. I don't want protection. I want, she stopped, not knowing what she wanted. Justice? Accountability? For the dead to come back to life. What you want is irrelevant, the general said, not unkindly. You have two choices. Disappear quietly with a new identity and full support. Or refuse, and we charge you with 47 counts of negligent homicide. Publicly. We'll call it rogue targeting, violation of engagement protocols. You'll spend the rest of your life in military prison while we maintain deniability. You'd sacrifice me to save yourselves. We'd sacrifice one operator to save the program. To save American lives. To maintain operational capability. Yes. Isra felt tears on her face. I killed children. Bad intelligence killed children. A system failure killed children. But someone has to be accountable. Someone has to pay. Either it's you publicly, or it's you quietly. Choose. She'd stared at her hands for a long time. Finally, what happens to me? New identity. New background. No military service in your history. You'll be relocated. Given support to start over. But you can never speak about this. Not to therapists. Not to family. Not to anyone. The mission never happened. You were never there. Sandstorm doesn't exist. How long? Forever. Or until the geopolitical situation changes enough that declassification becomes possible. Whichever comes first. Could be 5 years. Could be 50. Isra had signed the papers that day. Within a week, Captain Isra Khalil ceased to exist in every official record. Sarah Collins was born. Former logistics coordinator. No military service. Clean background. They'd given her money. A new apartment. Job placement assistance. She'd chosen to become a flight attendant because being in aircraft was the only thing that felt familiar when everything else had been stripped away. For 5 years, she'd served drinks at 35,000 feet and tried to forget she'd once killed from the same altitude. For 5 years, she'd had nightmares, the wedding footage. Children's faces. The bride's smile in photos before the missile hit. For 5 years, she'd been dead. And she'd learned to accept it. Until today. An alarm jerked Isra back to the present. She was at 18,000 feet now, descending fast. The fire warnings were intensifying. More systems failing every second. The radio crackled, United 2847, Sandstorm, this is Black Hawk lead. We have visual on your aircraft. You're trailing heavy smoke from the cockpit section and forward fuselage. Confirm you have control. Isra checked her instruments. Half of them were dead. The one still working showed a nightmare. Hydraulic pressure, dropping. Electrical system, 40% capacity and falling. Flight controls, degraded. Fire warnings, all zones. Black Hawk lead, I have partial control. Losing systems every 30 seconds. I need to land in the next 6 to 8 minutes or this aircraft will be unflyable. Copy, Sandstorm. Nearest suitable airport is Front Range, 23 miles ahead. Small field, 8,000-foot runway. We're clearing traffic now. Emergency equipment is being staged. Understood. But you need to know, I'm losing hydraulics. I may not be able to extend landing gear. A pause. Then, roger that. We'll foam the runway just in case. How's your fuel state? Isra checked. Fuel is good. Engines are still running normally. The fire hasn't reached them yet. That's something. Sandstorm, we're flanking you on both sides. We'll guide you in visually if you lose instruments. Appreciated, lead. She checked behind her. Both pilots were still unconscious but breathing. The emergency vents she'd opened had cleared some of the smoke from the cockpit, but both men needed immediate medical attention. In the cabin, flight attendants were managing controlled chaos. Oxygen masks deployed. Passengers in brace position. Emergency procedures being followed to the letter. Jessica's voice came over the intercom, shaky but professional. Cockpit, this is Jessica. All passengers secured. Some injuries from the initial descent, nothing critical. We're ready for emergency landing. Good work, Jessica, Isra responded. Tell everyone to brace for a hard landing. This isn't going to be smooth. She descended through 15,000 feet. The Black Hawks paced her on both sides, massive military helicopters with door gunners visible, flying in perfect formation. Escorting a burning civilian aircraft because its pilot had used a call sign from the dead. Isra wondered what they'd been told. Did they know who she was? Did they know about Yemen? Or were they just following orders, escorting an emergency aircraft? At 12,000 feet, her left hydraulic system failed completely. The yoke went mushy in her hands. She still had control, but it was getting harder. Like steering a car with power steering failure, technically possible, but requiring much more force. Black Hawk lead, I just lost left hydraulics. Control is degrading. Copy. Front range is 15 miles ahead. Can you make it? Isra did the math. 15 miles at current speed and descent rate, accounting for degrading controls and possible additional failures. Maybe. If nothing else breaks in the next 4 minutes. We'll take maybe. Keep flying, Sandstorm. You've got this. The confidence in his voice was oddly steadying. This stranger, this Black Hawk pilot she'd never met, believed she could do this. Because he believed Sandstorm could do this. The legendary drone operator who flew through impossible conditions. Who never failed a mission. Who was precise and clinical and perfect. He didn't know about the wedding. Didn't know about the 47 dead. Didn't know that Sandstorm's perfect record had been a lie built on a mountain of corpses. But his faith, misplaced as it was, gave her something to hold on to. She descended through 10,000 feet. The passengers could breathe without oxygen now. That was good. One less thing to worry about. The fire was still spreading, she could see flames reflected in the instruments. The heat was incredible. Sweat poured down her face, mixing with soot and smoke residue. Her arms ached from wrestling the controls. The burned scars on her forearms, old scars from the trailer fire 5 years ago, felt like they were burning again. But she kept flying. Because 184 people were counting on her. Because this time, she could save lives instead of taking them. Because maybe, just maybe, landing this aircraft could balance the scales just a tiny bit. 47 dead versus 184 saved. The math didn't work. Would never work. You couldn't trade lives like that. But it was something. Front Range Airport appeared through the haze ahead. Isra could see it clearly now, a single runway, maybe a mile and a half long, surrounded by flat Colorado plains. No buildings nearby. Perfect for an emergency landing. Except for the part where she had no landing gear. Black Hawk lead, I have the field in sight. Roger, Sandstorm. Runway 26 is clear. Foam trucks are in position. Ambulances standing by. You're cleared for straight-in approach. Isra set up for final approach. Normally, this would involve extending flaps to slow down, extending landing gear, following a precise glide path. Now it involved pointing the aircraft at the runway and hoping she could keep it straight. At 5,000 feet, she tried to extend the landing gear one more time. The handle moved. The indicators stayed dark. No gear extension. The hydraulic system was completely dead. Black Hawk lead, confirmed belly landing. No gear extension possible. Copy. We see flames near your nose gear bay. The fire's intense, Sandstorm. You need to put this bird down fast. Working on it. She was lined up with the runway, descending through 3,000 feet. The approach was stable, but her airspeed was too high. Without flaps, she couldn't slow down properly. She was going to hit the runway at 180 miles per hour. On the aircraft's belly. With fire burning through the fuselage. This was going to be spectacular. One way or another. At 1,000 feet, the right aileron cable snapped. She felt it happen, a sudden loss of control authority. The aircraft lurched violently to the right, wanting to roll. Isra jammed the yoke left and stomped on the left rudder pedal, fighting the roll. The aircraft shuddered but stabilized. Barely. But now she was flying with almost no roll control. The aircraft wanted to tip right. She was compensating with rudder and sheer force, but it was like trying to balance a knife on its edge. Black Hawk lead, I just lost right aileron. Aircraft wants to roll. You've got this, Sandstorm. 500 feet. Keep it centered. Her arms screamed with effort. The yoke fought her, the aircraft trying to kill them all. 400 feet. The runway was huge now, filling her vision. White foam covered the asphalt like fresh snow. 300 feet. She could see the fire trucks lined up alongside the runway. Emergency personnel in silver fire suits. Ambulances with lights flashing. 200 feet. The aircraft was still trying to roll right. She was fighting it with everything she had. Muscles trembling. Vision narrowing. 100 feet. Black Hawk lead, Sandstorm, you're coming in hot. Brace for hard impact. Isra's response was ice cold, the voice of someone who'd crashed dozens of drones during training. Someone who'd flown through sandstorms that would ground anyone else. Someone who'd survived a trailer fire while completing her mission. I've crashed aircraft into mountains during training. This is just a bigger drone. Hold my landing. 50 feet. She cut all remaining power. Both engines went to idle. Nothing but gravity and momentum now. 30 feet. She pulled back on the yoke, trying to flare, trying to bleed off speed. The nose came up slightly. 20 feet. The Black Hawks peeled off, giving her space. 10 feet. Isra braced herself. 5 feet. Here we go, she whispered. The Boeing 757, 130,000 pounds of aircraft, hit the foam-covered runway on its belly at 180 miles per hour. And the world exploded. The sound was apocalyptic. Metal screamed as the fuselage scraped concrete. Sparks erupted in sheets, thousands of them, cascading like fireworks. The noise was a physical force, grinding, shrieking, tearing. Inside the cockpit, Israel was thrown against her harness so hard it drove the air from her lungs. The instrument panel exploded. Glass flew. The windscreen cracked in spiderweb patterns that spread across her entire field of vision. The aircraft was sliding at 180 miles per hour, the nose digging into foam, the tail wanting to swing around. If it started to spin, if it went sideways, the aircraft would cartwheel and explode. Everyone would die. Israel fought the rudder pedals, using what little aerodynamic control she had left to keep the aircraft straight. The foam was helping, creating a slippery surface that let the aircraft slide relatively smoothly instead of catching and flipping. But the fire was spreading. She could see flames through the shattered windscreen, could feel the heat intensifying. 1,000 feet of sliding. The aircraft shuddered violently as some structural component, she couldn't tell what, gave way. More sparks. More grinding. 2,000 feet. The emergency exit doors were blowing off automatically, slides deploying into the foam. The aircraft's emergency systems, still partially functional, were doing their job. 3,000 feet. The aircraft was slowing now. Not quickly enough. They were going to run out of runway. Isra stood on the rudder pedals, throwing the rudder hard left and right, creating drag, using every trick she knew to slow down. 3,500 feet. The shrieking metal sound was fading, replaced by the roar of fire trucks racing alongside, their sirens barely audible over the grinding. 4,000 feet. Slower. Much slower now. The aircraft was wallowing, the nose plowing through foam. 4,200 feet. The Boeing 757 ground to a stop. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then Isra heard the most beautiful sound in the world, screaming. Not screams of terror. Screams of relief. Screams of survival. People were alive. She'd done it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unbuckle her harness. Her arms felt like jelly. Her entire body was trembling with adrenaline crash. Behind her, Captain Hayes was starting to regain consciousness, coughing weakly. First Officer Park was still out but breathing. Isra stood on legs that barely supported her weight. She had to get out. Had to get the pilots out. Had to. The windscreen exploded inward as firefighters smashed it from outside, spraying foam into the cockpit. Out. Out. Now, someone was shouting. Hands grabbed her, pulled her through the broken windscreen, lowered her to the foam-covered runway. She collapsed. Around her, the world was controlled chaos. Fire crews dousing the aircraft with foam, turning the burning fuselage into a white mountain. Paramedics rushing toward passengers sliding down emergency chutes. Black Hawk helicopters landing in formation, creating a perimeter. Emergency personnel everywhere, organized chaos. And 3 men in suits walking toward her. Not fire personnel. Not paramedics. Men in dark suits with CIA badges. The lead CIA officer reached her as 2 paramedics were trying to check her injuries. He flashed his badge at them. Give us a minute. The paramedics looked uncertain but backed away. The officer was mid-50s, gray hair precisely cut, expression of someone who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by anything. He looked down at Isra, still sitting on the foam-covered runway, covered in soot and blood. Captain Khalil, he said, not offering to help her up. You're supposed to be in witness protection. Isra, her face smudged with soot, bleeding from a dozen glass cuts, exhausted beyond measure, looked up at him. And 184 people were supposed to die. I made a choice. You exposed yourself. Used your call sign on an open frequency. Triggered classified protocols across 3 military installations. Do you understand what you've done? I saved lives. That's what I was trained to do before you people erased me for doing my job. The officer's face hardened. You were erased to protect national security. The Yemen incident was a political disaster that took 3 governments 5 years to bury. And now you've made yourself visible again. Used your call sign. Announced yourself to the world. Your cover story was built on a lie. Bad intelligence killed those people, not me. You fired the missile. Isra struggled to her feet, swaying but standing. On coordinates you gave me. With authorization you provided. Following protocols you created. I did everything right. Your system failed. And instead of fixing it, you buried me. The system has been fixed. Multiple intelligence reforms. New verification protocols. But making it public serves no purpose except to damage national security and allied relationships. 47 people died. Their families deserve the truth. Their families received compensation. The matter was resolved diplomatically. The political situation is stable. Reopening this now creates an international incident. Isra stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. I've been silent for 5 years. I've lived in hiding, serving coffee, pretending to be someone I'm not, having nightmares every single night about children I killed following your orders. I'm done being silent. A second suit stepped forward, younger, nervous. Ma'am, we need to debrief you. There are protocols for situations like this. Your protocols can wait. Those passengers need medical attention. Those pilots need help. I need to. She swayed. The adrenaline was finally wearing off completely. Exhaustion hit like a physical blow. Paramedics caught her before she fell. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, the lead CIA officer leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. This isn't over, Captain. You've opened a door that needs to stay closed. The Pentagon will have questions. The State Department will have questions. Every journalist in America will want to know who Sandstorm is and why she was flying a commercial aircraft. Isra's response was barely audible, but perfectly clear. Then you shouldn't have built your cover-up on top of my grave. Because I just clawed my way out. They loaded her into an ambulance. As the doors closed, she saw passengers being evacuated from the aircraft, sliding down emergency chutes into waiting arms. Saw families reuniting. Saw people alive who would have been dead. 184 souls saved. The math still didn't work. 47 dead versus 184 saved. Lives weren't a ledger where you could balance accounts. But for the first time in 5 years, Isra felt something other than guilt. Not redemption. She'd never have that. But purpose. She'd used her skills to save instead of kill. Had broken cover to protect instead of destroy. It was something. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. Behind it, news vans were already arriving, cameras filming the burning aircraft and the military helicopters and the survivors. The story was about to break. And Captain Isra, Sandstorm, Khalil was about to become the most famous pilot in America. Whether she wanted to be or not. The first video appeared on social media 17 minutes after the landing. A passenger in row 22, a teenager named Marcus who'd been filming on his phone since the smoke started, had captured everything. The smoke filling the cabin. The flight attendant named Sarah running toward the cockpit. The sound of her breaking through the door. And most importantly, the audio of her radio transmission. Sandstorm requesting immediate escort. Then the descent. The terror. The emergency landing. The belly landing slide across the foam-covered runway. Marcus uploaded the video while still sitting on the runway, waiting for evacuation. Title: Insane Emergency Landing, Flight Attendant Saves 184 People, Who is Sandstorm? The video went viral instantly. Within 1 hour, 5 million views. Within 2 hours, 15 million views. Within 6 hours, 40 million views. News agencies picked it up. CNN played it on loop. Fox News brought in aviation experts to analyze the landing. MSNBC interviewed passengers. And everyone had the same question: who is Sandstorm? Military aviation forums exploded with speculation. User Air Force Vet 87, that's a military call sign. Sandstorm. I remember hearing that name at Creech AFB. Drone operator. Supposed to be one of the best. User Drone Command, Sandstorm was involved in classified operations. Yemen Theater. The record was sealed 5 years ago. Nobody knows what happened. User TAC_pilot, my buddy at Peterson said Black Hawk scrambled when they heard that call sign. Like it triggered some kind of protocol. Whoever she is, she's connected to something big. Retired Air Force personnel started reaching out to journalists. Anonymously. Carefully. Sandstorm was a female drone pilot. Captain. Maybe 24, 25 years old when she disappeared from the program. Rumor was she was involved in a catastrophic intelligence failure. But everything's classified. Pentagon press officers refused to comment. We cannot discuss classified personnel or operations. CIA press officers refused to comment. No comment on intelligence matters. State Department press officers refused to comment. We're monitoring the situation. But the story was out. And it was growing. By the next morning, investigative journalists had identified the flight attendant, Sarah Collins, 29, employed by United Airlines for 5 years, no military service listed in any public record. But facial recognition software matched Sarah Collins to old Air Force photos of Captain Isra Khalil, photos that shouldn't exist, that should have been scrubbed from every database, but that someone had leaked. Newspapers around the world ran the story. Mystery flight attendant who saved 184 was secret military pilot. Who is Sandstorm? The drone operator who died 5 years ago just landed a burning plane. Pentagon covered up hero pilot's identity, sources say. And then someone leaked the critical piece: Yemen. A journalist at The Intercept received an anonymous email with classified documents. Documents about Operation White Raven. About the wedding massacre. About 47 civilians killed. About Captain Isra Khalil being erased from records. The story exploded. Drone pilot who died 5 years ago was scapegoated for Pentagon intelligence failure that killed 47 civilians at wedding. The Pentagon's worst nightmare had come true. Isra woke up in a private hospital room with 2 military police officers outside her door. Not regular police. Military police. Armed. She was in protective custody. Technically for her own safety. Practically, to keep her from talking to the press. Her arms were bandaged, smoke inhalation, glass cuts, second-degree burns on her hands from hot metal. Nothing life-threatening. She'd survived worse. A nurse came in, checked her vitals, gave her pain medication. Wouldn't make eye contact. Wouldn't answer questions about why there were guards at the door. 30 minutes later, the door opened. 3 people entered. 1, the CIA officer from the runway. 2, a woman in an expensive suit, Pentagon, based on the military bearing and the ID badge marked Defense Intelligence Agency. 3, a lawyer in JAG uniform. The woman sat down without being invited. Captain Khalil, I'm Deputy Director Sarah Chen, Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to discuss your situation. My situation is that I saved 184 lives. What happens now is you let me go and we all move on. If only it were that simple. Chen opened a folder. You violated the terms of your witness protection agreement. You used classified authentication codes on an open frequency. You exposed sensitive operational procedures. You triggered a media firestorm that's currently making international headlines. I saved lives. Yes. You did. Heroically. But you also reopened a wound that 3 governments spent 5 years healing. The Yemen incident was resolved. Families were compensated. Diplomatic relationships were restored. And now it's front-page news again. Isra laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Resolved? You mean covered up? 47 people died because your intelligence was wrong, and instead of admitting it, you buried the truth under my identity. Chen's expression didn't change. The intelligence failure has been addressed internally. Multiple reforms were implemented. New verification protocols. Additional oversight. The system was fixed. But nobody was held accountable. The analysts responsible were reassigned. The intelligence gathering procedures were overhauled. Accountability happened. Quietly. Quietly, Isra repeated. Everything quietly. The deaths were quiet. The cover-up was quiet. My burial was quiet. Well, I'm done being quiet. The CIA officer leaned forward. Captain, you need to understand the consequences. If this story continues, if the full details come out, it will damage US-Yemen relations. It will undermine confidence in our intelligence community. It will endanger active operations and operatives. Then maybe your operations are built on a foundation that deserves to be undermined. Chen stood abruptly. Here's your situation, Captain. Your story is out. We can't put that genie back in the bottle. But we can control the narrative. You can work with us, give a carefully prepared statement, emphasize that you followed proper protocols, make it clear the intelligence failure was systemic, or you can go rogue. What happens if I go rogue? You'll be torn apart. Congressional investigations. Criminal charges for violating witness protection terms. Potential treason charges for exposing classified operations. Media scrutiny that will destroy any chance at a normal life. And will position the narrative that you went rogue, that you're unstable, that your actions, both in Yemen and now, show poor judgment. Isra met Chen's gaze. You'd destroy me to save yourselves. We'd protect national security using all available means. Yes. The JAG lawyer finally spoke. Captain, I'm here to offer you representation if you choose to cooperate. The Pentagon is prepared to offer you a deal, controlled disclosure, medical retirement with full benefits, a chance to tell your story on our terms. Your terms. Terms that protect operational security while acknowledging your service and your heroism yesterday. Isra looked at all 3 of them. Get out. Captain. Get out. I need to think. And I need to talk to my own lawyer, not someone the Pentagon sent to make sure I stay in line. Chen nodded. You have 24 hours. Then we start the process with or without you. They left. Isra was alone again. Through the window, she could see news vans in the hospital parking lot. Reporters everywhere. Cameras. Satellite trucks. Her phone, returned with her belongings, had 847 missed calls and thousands of text messages. She scrolled through them. Journalists requesting interviews. Former Air Force colleagues expressing support. Strangers calling her a hero. Strangers calling her a murderer. Advocacy groups offering support. Veterans organizations reaching out. Book agents offering deals. Movie producers wanting rights to her story. And one text message that made her stop breathing. Unknown number, my daughter died in Yemen. You killed her. But today you saved lives. I don't know if I can forgive you. But I wanted you to know, truth matters more than revenge. Tell the truth. Isra stared at that message for a long time. Then she called her own lawyer. Not JAG. A civilian attorney who specialized in whistleblower cases. I need help, she said when he answered. And I'm going to need it publicly. 3 days later, Isra stood in front of every major news camera in America. The Pentagon had tried to stop her. The CIA had threatened her with charges. The State Department had warned about diplomatic consequences. But her lawyer, a former JAG officer named Michael Torres who'd successfully defended 3 high-profile whistleblowers, had advised her that the public interest in her story outweighed any classification concerns, especially given that classified information was already leaked. The press conference was held at a hotel conference room in Denver. Packed beyond capacity. Every major news outlet. International media. Military reporters. Aviation experts. Legal analysts. Israel wore civilian clothes, jeans, simple blouse. No makeup to cover the scars on her jawline. No attempt to hide the bandages on her hands or the burn scars on her forearms. She was done hiding. Michael Torres spoke first, laying out the legal framework. My client, Captain Isra Khalil, is exercising her First Amendment rights to speak about matters of public concern. While certain operational details remain classified, the broad facts of her story are already in the public domain through multiple leaks. She's here to set the record straight. Then Isra stepped to the microphone. My name is Captain Isra Khalil, she began, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. For 5 years, I've been dead. Today, I'm coming back to life. The room fell completely silent. I want to tell you 3 stories. The first is about a drone operator who followed every rule and killed 47 innocent people. The second is about a government that chose to bury the truth instead of fixing the problem. The third is about a flight attendant who saved 184 lives by revealing who she really was. She told them everything. The drone program at Creech Air Force Base. The 263 missions she flew. The 89 confirmed kills. Her perfect record. Her call sign, Sandstorm. The reporters were silent, scribbling frantically, cameras recording every word. On March 12, 2020, I was ordered to execute Operation White Raven. My target was Abdul Hamza, a high-value terrorist. I had authorization from the highest levels. I had intelligence from 3 independent sources. I had confirmation from ground teams. I had thermal imagery showing no children present. She paused, her voice thickening. I fired the missile. I destroyed the building. And then I learned the truth, it wasn't a terrorist compound. It was a wedding. The intelligence was wrong, wrong target, wrong location, wrong everything. 47 civilians died. 12 of them children. The bride. The groom. Families celebrating. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I followed every protocol. I did everything I was trained to do. And 47 people died because the system failed. Because intelligence agencies made mistakes. Because 3 independent sources were all wrong. She looked directly at the cameras. The Pentagon's response was not to fix the system. It was to bury me. They erased my service record. Discharged me under false pretenses. Put me in witness protection with a new identity. Told me I could never speak about what happened. And they told the families in Yemen that it was a tragic error by local forces, they denied American involvement. More murmurs. Journalists typing faster. For 5 years, I lived as Sarah Collins. Flight attendant. Nobody important. Having nightmares every night about the children I killed. Serving coffee at 35,000 feet while trying to forget I used to kill from the same altitude. She paused, taking a breath. 3 days ago, United Flight 2847 caught fire. Both pilots were unconscious. The aircraft was dying. 184 people were about to die. And I had a choice, stay hidden and let them die, or use my training and expose myself. I chose to save them. I broke my cover. I used my call sign. I landed that aircraft. And now I'm standing here because I'm done living a lie. Questions erupted. Reporters shouting over each other. Isra answered them all. Question: Do you blame yourself for the deaths in Yemen? A. Yes. Every day. I pulled the trigger. But I also blame a system that gave me wrong information and then buried me instead of fixing itself. Question: Do you suffer from PTSD? A. Yes. Nightmares. Flashbacks. Guilt. But I'm getting help now. Real help, not Pentagon-managed silence. Question: Do you regret saving the passengers if it meant exposing yourself? A. No. Never. Those 184 people deserve to live. I'd make the same choice again. Question: What do you want? A. Truth. Accountability. For the families in Yemen to know it was American intelligence that failed, not their loved ones being in the wrong place. For drone operators to get real mental health support. For the system to be better. Question: Will you return to military service? A. No. I can't. The trauma is too deep. But I can help other operators who are struggling. The press conference lasted 2.5 hours. When it was over, Isra walked out of the building to find two groups of protesters. On one side, veterans holding signs supporting her. Sandstorm is a hero. She saved 184 lives. Tell the truth. On the other side, a smaller, quieter group. They held photographs. Photographs of children. Yemeni children. The faces of the 47. Isra walked toward them. A woman, perhaps 40 years old, wearing a hijab, stood at the front of the group. She held a photo of a little girl, maybe 7 years old. This was my niece, the woman said quietly. Amira. She died in your drone strike. Isra felt tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You did not kill her. Lies killed her. Bad information. But for 5 years, we did not know the truth. We thought it was an accident. A mistake by local forces. The woman's eyes were full of pain. Thank you for telling truth. It does not bring her back. But it gives us the right to grieve honestly. They didn't embrace. There was too much pain between them for that. But the woman nodded at Isra. A acknowledgement. Not forgiveness, that might never come. But understanding. Isra stood with them for several minutes, looking at the photographs, speaking with the families, carrying the weight of what she'd done. Then Michael Torres touched her arm. We need to go. There are people who want to talk to you. Friendly people. She got in the car and left. Behind her, the news crews filmed everything. The story was no longer containable. The Pentagon was forced to declassify portions of Isra's operational record. Not everything. Operational details remained secret. But the broad strokes, her service, her missions, the Yemen incident, the intelligence failure. Congressional hearings were held. Intelligence officers testified, some reluctantly, some with genuine regret. The analysts whose wrong information led to the strike came forward, explaining the systemic failures that caused 3 independent sources to all be wrong. Protocols were changed publicly this time. New verification requirements. Additional oversight. Reforms that were documented and transparent. The families of the Yemen victims received official apologies from the U.S. government and additional compensation. The truth was acknowledged publicly. 3 governments, U.S., Yemen, and Saudi Arabia, issued a joint statement admitting the intelligence failure. But there were no criminal charges against Isra. The public support was too strong. She'd saved lives. She'd told the truth. Making her a martyr would only make things worse for everyone. Isra didn't return to the Air Force. She couldn't. The trauma was too deep. The guilt too permanent. Instead, she founded something new. The Sandstorm Foundation, mental health support for drone operators. It started small. A website. A hotline. Meeting space in a rented office in Colorado Springs, near military installations. But drone operators started reaching out. Active duty personnel struggling with the psychological cost of killing from 7,000 miles away. Veterans who couldn't sleep. Pilots who'd left the program broken and unable to talk about it. Isra helped them. Not because she had answers. But because she understood. She understood the 1.2-second delay that gave you just enough time to see the people you were about to kill. She understood going home to dinner with your family after launching missiles that killed someone else's family. She understood the impossible disconnect between combat and normalcy. She testified before Congress about drone warfare's human cost, not just the targets, but the operators. We train them to be precise. To be clinical. To separate emotion from execution. And then we're surprised when they can't turn off that separation. When they can't reconnect with normal life. When they break under the weight of killing people they never met for reasons they sometimes don't fully understand. Her testimony led to new programs. Mandatory mental health screening for drone operators. Dedicated PTSD treatment. Peer support groups. She wrote a book, Sandstorm, the pilot they buried twice. It became a New York Times bestseller. Not because people wanted military glory stories, but because people wanted truth. Raw, uncomfortable, honest truth about the cost of modern warfare. And she kept working as a flight attendant. Part-time now. Just a few flights per month. But she needed it. Being in aircraft, hearing engines, feeling takeoff, experiencing flight, was the only place where both versions of herself felt real. The drone operator and the flight attendant. The killer and the lifesaver. Both parts of who she was. She was learning to live with both. One Tuesday afternoon, 7 months after the landing, Israel was working a Denver to Phoenix flight when a young Air Force officer approached her during boarding. He was maybe 25, fresh-faced, wearing his dress uniform. Nervous. Clutching a copy of her book. "Ma'am," he said quietly. "I know who you are. I'm Lieutenant David Park. Stationed at Creech. Drone Operations. MQ-9 Reapers." He swallowed hard. "We study your missions in training. You're a legend there." Isra looked at him, really looked at him. Saw herself 5 years ago. 6 years ago. Young. Confident. Certain she was doing something important and necessary. Before the wedding. Before the truth. "I'm not a legend," she said gently. "I'm a person who killed 47 people by accident and then saved 184 on purpose. The first one haunts me every single day. The second one lets me sleep sometimes. That's not legendary, Lieutenant. That's just survival." David nodded slowly. "They tell us about the wedding now. In training. They use it as a case study in intelligence verification. Multiple sources, all wrong. How it can happen. Good. They should. Can I ask you something?" He looked uncomfortable. Do you regret becoming a pilot?" Isra thought about it. Really thought about it. This question still haunted her sometimes. "No," she finally said. "I regret that people died because of bad intelligence. I regret that the system failed. I regret that it took me 5 years to tell the truth. But I don't regret having the skills that saved 184 people. Skills are just tools, Lieutenant. It's what you do with them, and what you do when they're used for the wrong purpose, that matters." She paused, then added, "But here's what I wish someone had told me when I was your age: you can follow every protocol perfectly and still end up with blood on your hands. And when that happens, not if, but when, you need to decide who you want to be. The person who hides from it? The person who lets others bury the truth? Or the person who faces it, owns it, and works to make sure it doesn't happen again?" David considered this. Which one are you? I spent 5 years being the first kind. Now I'm trying to be the third kind. It's harder. But it's the only way I can live with myself. They also tell us, David said quietly, that if we're struggling, we should reach out. That it's not weak to ask for help. That the foundation exists. He looked directly at her. Thank you for that. For making it okay to not be okay. Isra felt unexpected tears. You're welcome, Lieutenant. And if you ever need to talk, really talk, not just official debriefing talk, you call the Foundation. Day or night. We'll be there. He thanked her and moved to his seat. Isra finished her pre-flight checks and took her position in the galley. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, she looked out the window at the Colorado sky, the same sky she'd operated in as a drone pilot, the same sky she'd nearly died in 7 months ago. The aircraft lifted off smoothly. Beautiful takeoff. Clear skies. And Isra thought about redemption. Not the Hollywood kind, where one heroic act erases all past sins. Not the kind where you save people and suddenly everything's okay. Real redemption. The messy kind. The kind where you carry your guilt forever but choose to do good anyway. The kind where you don't get forgiveness but you earn the right to keep trying. The kind where saving 184 people doesn't erase 47 deaths, but it means something anyway. She thought about the children in the photographs. The ones she'd killed without ever knowing they were there. Their faces haunted her still. Would always haunt her. And she thought about the passengers on Flight 2847. Real people with real lives who got to go home, got to hug their families, got to keep living because she made an impossible choice. Both truths existed. Both were real. Neither cancelled out the other. She couldn't bring back the dead. Couldn't undo the past. Couldn't make the nightmares stop completely. But she could help other drone operators learn from her mistakes. Could advocate for better intelligence verification. Could demand accountability. Could provide mental health support. Could tell the truth even when it cost her everything. Could save lives when the opportunity came. It wasn't redemption. But it was something. And for now, something was enough. The aircraft climbed through 30,000 feet, the autopilot engaged, systems running perfectly. Isra served drinks with genuine warmth. Helped an elderly passenger with their luggage. Answered questions about connecting flights. She was just a flight attendant again. Doing her job. Being kind to strangers. And also Captain Isra, Sandstorm, Khalil. Drone operator. Whistleblower. Survivor. Both at once. Finally learning to be both at once. The aircraft flew on through clear skies toward Phoenix. And for the first time in 6 years, Isra Khalil felt something like peace. Isra stood in front of a classroom at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, addressing 60 young cadets in their final year of training. She was 34 now. The burn scars on her arms were visible, she never hid them anymore. The scars on her jaw had faded but were still there if you looked closely. The nightmares were less frequent but never truly gone. The classroom was silent as she spoke. You're being given enormous power. Some of you will fly drones. Some will be intelligence analysts. Some will make targeting decisions. All of you will have the power to end lives from thousands of miles away. She paused, looking at their young faces. Some of you will use that power perfectly. You'll follow every protocol. Do everything right. Verify everything twice. Triple-check coordinates. And people will still die who shouldn't have died. The cadets listened intently. When that happens, and statistics say it will happen to approximately 30% of you during your careers, you'll have a choice. You can let the system bury you. Let them erase your name and pretend it never happened. Go quietly into witness protection or early retirement or a desk job where you'll never have to think about it again. She walked closer to them. Or you can fight for truth and accountability, even when it costs you everything. Your career. Your identity. Your peace of mind. Your sense of who you are. A female cadet raised her hand. Which choice did you make, ma'am? Isra smiled sadly. First I made the wrong choice. I let them bury me. For 5 years, I hid from the truth. And it nearly destroyed me. Then I made the right choice. I fought for truth. And it destroyed me in different ways. So there's no good choice, another cadet asked. There's the choice you can live with. For me, telling the truth, accepting responsibility while demanding accountability from the system, was the only way I could live with myself. Even though it cost me everything I'd built. She gestured to her book, which was now required reading in ethics classes. But it also gave me something. Purpose. The ability to help others. The chance to change the system so fewer of you end up where I did. That's worth it. After the lecture, several cadets approached her. Most wanted books signed. Some wanted advice. One wanted to tell her about a family member who'd been on flight 2847. My aunt was on that flight, the young man said. She talks about you all the time. Says you saved her life. I did my job, Isra said simply. She says you did more than that. She says you gave up everything to save strangers. That's heroism, ma'am. Isra shook her head. Heroism is complicated. I saved people on that flight. But I also killed people in Yemen. Both things are true. I'm learning to live with both. She left the academy and drove to the foundation offices. They'd grown significantly, now occupying an entire building, with staff psychologists, peer counselors, support groups. Over 3,000 drone operators and intelligence analysts had come through their programs. Suicide rates among drone operators had dropped 40% since the foundation launched. The Pentagon had even started referring struggling operators to them officially. Isra spent 2 hours in meetings, reviewing cases, talking to staff. Then she drove to the airport. She had a flight that evening. Denver to Chicago. The same route she'd nearly died on 5 years ago. As she walked through the terminal in her flight attendant uniform, a few people recognized her. Most didn't. She was famous, but in the way that people are famous for a moment before the world moves on. She preferred it that way. On the aircraft, she went through her pre-flight routine. Safety checks. Passenger greetings. Overhead bin organization. An elderly man smiled at her. You look familiar. Have we met? Maybe, Isra said warmly. I fly this route pretty often. That must be it, he said, settling into his seat. The aircraft pushed back from the gate right on time. As they lifted into the evening sky, Isra stood in the galley and looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. 5 years ago, she'd been Sarah Collins, hiding from her past. 7 years ago, she'd been Captain Sandstorm, the Pentagon's perfect operator. 12 years ago, she'd been a young pilot convinced she was making the world safer. Now she was all of those people and none of them. She was Isra Khalil. Just Isra. A person who'd made terrible mistakes and incredible saves. A person who carried guilt and pride in equal measure. A person who'd learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past but about choosing how to move forward. The aircraft climbed through clouds toward cruising altitude. Smooth flight. Clear skies ahead. And Isra Khalil, drone operator, flight attendant, killer, savior, truth teller, survivor, flew on. Still haunted. Still healing. Still trying. Still alive. This story isn't about good versus evil. It's about impossible choices in a complex world. Isra Khalil isn't a perfect hero who saves the day and rides off into the sunset. She's a real person who did exactly what she was trained to do, suffered catastrophically when the system failed, and then had to decide what kind of person she wanted to be in the aftermath. The 47 people who died in Yemen don't come back because she saved 184 people on Flight 2847. The mathematics of life don't work that way. Both truths exist forever. But she stopped hiding. She told the truth. She demanded accountability. She helped others. And she learned to live with complexity instead of seeking simple absolution. That's not redemption. That's just being human. And sometimes, being human, with all its guilt and glory, mistakes and miracles, is enough.